Heisenberg, what's up? And today I'm gonna do a review on the third season of Breaking Bad. Beware of spoilers of the previous two seasons. In the last two seasons, Walt and Jesse teamed up to cook meth together. They took down their enemies like Crazy 8, Emilio, Tuco, and Spooge. But later on, Jesse loved Jane and he wandered off to his drug-using path. So Saul the lawyer helped Walt to find a new meth cartel head, which is Gus Fring. The first episode is No Más, which means no more in Spanish. After what happened last season, Walt and Jesse moved on. Jesse joined a rehab and learned about self-acceptance, while Walt tried to forget about all this and move on. Meanwhile, Skylar became a total bitch and she really hated Walt. While the new characters of the cousins were introduced, but they didn't do much to the plot in this episode. It's a fairly okay episode. I really like to see Walt being more bold and egotistic, but I also anticipate for more drama. Then it's episode 2, Caballo sin nombre, which means a horse with no name in Spanish. Great, another Spanish episode title. So this episode is about disputing. Walt and Skylar starting to hate each other more and more. Walt bought Skylar pizza, but Skylar refused, so he threw the pizza onto the roof. And that's one of the best comedic moments in the series so far. And then we have Jesse, who moved away from the old place he rented, and he still wanted a house. And his parents' house is the only house he knew, so conflicts happened. And the teaser is really good too. Although it doesn't play a big part in the plot, it's still something memorable. It's a pretty cool episode, but I still wish to see more drama and excitement. Moving on to episode 3, IFT. A weird little episode which got me curious for a while, until the last line of the episode is revealed. Nothing crazy happened. I love how the writers continue to build connections for the cartel, and how the cousins were connected to Tio and how Tio was connected to Gus. And there are more entertaining scenes concerning Walt and Skylar's hateful relationship, and I'm glad that Walter Jr. stood on Walt's side. And Jesse was still sad about Jane's death. Aaron Paul did more Emmy-worthy performances. I'm still anticipating for more drama, and I still wish that something even more dramatic happens. Next is episode 4, Greenlight. Walt and Jesse came so close to teaming up again, but it didn't happen after all. Walt versus Skylar feud still happening, and then Walt hated Ted, cause, I still remember that hilarious scene where Walt tried to break into Ted's office, but totally failed in the most embarrassing way. I also love the memorable scene where Walt told Jesse that the meth he cooked is trash, and Jesse was pissed. Although it had a couple of memorable moments, there's not much to it, other than some more funny conflicts with a dramatic backdrop to it. It's still somewhat a boring and slow episode, but still in a neat way. Over to episode 5, Más, which gives a nod to the first episode of the season, No Más. I like this episode because this episode is where Walt got back into the meth game. Hank continued to search for Heisenberg, and getting closer to Heisenberg after collecting a lot of useful clues, which creates a suspense that puts the audience on the edge of their seats. On this episode, Jesse worked for Gus briefly, but it is actually a plan to lure Walt back into the meth business. Therefore, the Superlab had made its first appearance on the show, and marked a new location of the show. And yes, this episode also marked a new beginning. Then it's episode 6, Sunset. Speaking of new beginnings, there really is a new beginning when Walt said he was confident about his future. Walt finally rejoined Gus to cook more meth, but this time in a way more professional way. In the Super Lab, we also get to know a new character, Gale, which will play a big role in this season too. We also get a satisfying montage when Walt and Gale, two chemistry nerds, teamed up greatly, with jazzy music in the back. On the other hand, Gus gave the cousins a lethal mission that also plays a big part in the season. Meanwhile, Hank was so close to finding Jesse, and ended up with an extremely suspenseful scene where Walt helped Jesse get away from Hank. But did they succeed? You'll know it in the next episode. The ending was incredible. The editing and the music was amazing too. And yes, the drama and the tension we have all anticipated have returned. That's why this is the episode of the season so far. Then the story progresses on to episode 7, 1 minute. First, there's another weird flashback teaser, which is creative. But insane things are going to happen, so I'm giving a spoiler alert. The episode starts immediately with Hank rushing up towards Jesse and beat him up brutally. I wasn't prepared for this, and this really shocked me. This episode really started with a bang. Then it's all Hank in the aftermath and Jesse in the aftermath. The problem is, now Jesse threatened to turn Walt in. I like how the show makes the audience worry about the characters, which not only motivates us to watch more, but gives us space to enjoy. Then the cousins continue to hunt Hank down, adds the tension. Then Jesse was really mad about what Hank did. Aaron Paul delivered an epic and mind-blowing performance. We also see Walt and Gail's relationship starting to fall apart. And the last scene, oh my gosh. A man called Hank and said he will be killed by 2 men, and he had 1 minute to run away. And Hank thought it was a prank call, but he started to be worried and he looked at the clock as every second passed. He was really nervous, and so was I. 1 minute has passed and no one appeared until a few seconds later, the cousins came and started to shoot Hank. Hank panicked without a gun, tried to protect himself, and at last he killed one of them. And the second cousin got an axe while Hank was almost dead. Hank tried to pick up the bullet and put it in the chamber slot and killed him in 1 shot. This is shocking and intense. This episode will go down as a classic Breaking Bad episode. Over to episode 8, I See You. Now Hank is recovering and Jesse was about to replace Gail. Simple plot. Nothing really happened. Gail was unhappy, and as a viewer, I didn't want Gail to feel bad. Then Jesse was back in the business. He also felt pleased when he knew what was going to happen to Hank, and what happened to Hank. After a long time, we finally get to see another montage in the show. This time we see Jesse being bored and killing time in the super lab. And it's another comedic moment when Jesse filled his hazmat suit with air and someone serious like Victor finds out. Also a nice reference to being a blowfish. Also, a few interesting things happened at the hospital, and a character got into trouble and people died. I wish I know that character more, cause he was still a total stranger in the show so far. Season 3, Episode 9 is called Kafkaesque. What a word. The teaser probably is my favorite episode teaser ever. It starts off with the Los Pollos Hermanos ad, and the narrator says it's slow cooked to perfection, and 1 taste and you'll know it. And it's referring to meth. And at the end of the ad, instead of showing the Los Pollos logo, we see Walt and Jesse packing boxes of meth over and over again, and how they put them in bags, hide them in buckets, and ship it out. With a silly, funky song at the background. That's a great montage. It feels really pleasant to watch it.
1 taste, and you will know.
It looks frustrating and repetitive, but it was very cool at the same time. But getting into the episode, the story isn't that exciting. But this episode is full of lies. Jesse said he was woodworking, but he was actually cooking meth. And Skyler said Walt was playing blackjack, but Walt was actually cooking meth. It all became a web of lies. And into episode 10, Fly, the lowest IMDb rated Breaking Bad episode, with a shocking 7.9. Well, at least it's 7.9 when I watched the episode. I think it's 7.7 now.
You don't decontaminate.
What are you even trying to say?
and damn, because this episode is so underrated. You know what? I think the reason why this episode is hated because it's aired on the same time with Lost's last episode, The End. And of course, everyone would prefer learning what happened in Lost at the end than watching Walt and Jesse catching a fly. The writer Vince Gilligan said Fly is a bottle episode. It's the cheapest episode in Breaking Bad. And all along they are catching Walt's biggest enemy, a fly. Some may think it's a filler episode that has a silly idea, but it's more of a dialogue-based episode, and it's more like a break in the season. And we see Walt getting more aggressive. Even a fly can piss off Walt that much. The dialogues are amazing, and one day I'll rewatch this episode, and it's not that bad overall. And it's 2 episodes left till the finale. Tension was rising, and story progresses onto episode 11. Wait. Abby Kiwi? Abby Quia? Abby Kia? Abby Q? I don't know. Whatever. Walt is involved in more lies and Jesse caused more trouble. So the story went on and it's still really entertaining, as always. Walt was trying to cover things up and Jesse was always doing new things and it served as a plot line, which is really efficient and it creates a lot of room for creativity. Walt promised Marie to pay for Hank's physical therapy, which ironically means that even though the cousins didn't directly attack Walt, Walt still had to pay, which means that the cousins indirectly affected Walt. How unfortunate. Where Jesse hooked up with a new girl in the rehab, Andrea, and they fell in love. Let's hope Andrea wouldn't end up like Jane. But still, Jane is a better lover than Andrea. Kristen Ritter was good at being Jane too. And as always, I like Saul Goodman. He did some cringe-worthy scenes which made things funnier, and the ending was satisfying too. Moving on to episode 12, Half Measures. I'm giving a spoiler alert. In season 2, something bad happened to Combo, so Jesse found out who is behind this, and Jesse wanted revenge, of course. And Walt disagreed, of course, but Jesse is determined, so shit is going down. What a great storyline for the last 2 episodes, so that the finale would be as dramatic as possible. And finales must leave the audience in shock, so I'm sure the writers were gonna go as far as they possibly can to wrap up season 3. This episode involves a lot of Gus, which is entertaining, and it's quite surprising that some antagonists Jesse and Walt were facing is somehow connected to Gus. And the scene where Mike brings Jesse out to Gus was intense and good. But the ending, oh my gosh, it's insane. Although I knew it's gonna happen, because I saw the clip in YouTube before. But still, it's extremely shocking. Jesse was face to face with the 2 men that killed Tomas. And then boom, right before Jesse got himself killed, Walt drove a car right into those 2 men and grabbed a gun and shot another person in the head without hesitation. Which parallels with how Walt dealt with Crazy 8 and Emilio. Before, Walt killed Emilio accidentally and in a sloppy way, and hesitantly killed Crazy 8 with a lot of remorse. But Walt killed these 2 men instantly, this time. Moving on to episode 3, Full Measure. I can't tell you how much I love this episode, and the season, and the show as a whole. There was a flashback teaser that compared the old times with the new times, and we realized Walter White had changed a lot. And I really loved the scene where Mike just entered the house and killed a few dudes in the most professional way ever. The first half of the episode isn't that exciting or intense. It's basically cleaning up for what happened on the last episode. But still, at the end, I was so shocked. So I'm giving a spoiler alert again. What blew my mind was Walt's decision to kill Gale. Walt could have just talked to Gus and tell him that he's fine and healthy. But instead, Walt decided to kill Gale. And suddenly, Victor came out of nowhere, which adds into the tension and the panicking. Mike was about to kill Walt, while Walt made Jesse kill Gale. It was really shocking, and it leaves you speechless at the end. Overall, this season is way better than Season 1 and 2. While Season 1 and 2 are great, this season is even greater. More surprises, more shocks, and more insane character development. The only problem that this season has is it doesn't have a strong start, and it doesn't keep the audience completely hooked throughout the whole season. Season 2 keeps feeding the audience entertainment, but this season is the one that shocked me and all of the viewers. Bryan Cranston and Aaron Paul, as always, great acting performances. Anna Gunn also acted well, playing a bitch. The montages are great. The writers are innovative and bold, with their new storyline ideas that twists and turns. The tension and the suspense is also stronger. The worst goes to episode 4, Green Light, and the best is episode 13, the season finale, Full Measure. At last, Breaking Bad Season 3 is mind-blowing, and I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. So, have you watched Breaking Bad Season 3? From 1 to 10, how much would you rate it? Like if you like, and subscribe if you want more.
Oh, who is he? Please tell me something good.
I think he's stable enough now for you to go and see him briefly. I'm sorry, but I think it's immediate family only.
We're all family.
I understand, but there's a certain protocol we have.